Hey everyone, it's Mr. Shaver again. I'm going to do a demonstration today on making a pinch pot for our upcoming projects, but this is a really good skill to know how to do. You can use it as a building block, you can use it to make mugs, you can use it to start vases. It's also a really good skill to learn if you ever want to wheel throw. Knowing how to do a pinch pot really helps out when you want to wheel throw. It's good for making sculptures. You can put pinch pots together to make hollow forms. You can use them for little decorative pieces. This is a great skill to practice and learn and work with. So I have a few things here that I'm going to use. You don't need a lot of materials for this. I have my canvas on my table, which you'll see. I have a fettling knife, I have a loop tool, and then some other smoothing tools, but you might not even need them. So first thing I'm going to do, I have a big piece of clay here. I do not need this much clay to make a pinch pot, okay? You need just enough clay that's going to fit in your hand because it's a starting point, not a finishing point, generally speaking, okay? Things you can do with pinch pots, you can make mugs I talked about. So this was a pinch pot with a couple coils added on to it. This is a student example, started with a pinch pot. This project here, bigger vase, started with a pinch pot. You can also use them in pieces. So this same student made it in for a vessel. The bottom foot is a pinch pot, and this top part that they added on at the end was a pinch pot, okay? So really useful. And then you can also shape those pinch pots and make them into other sculptures. These were 3 little small pinch pots the student put together, cut into them. So again, it's a building block. It can be a finishing point, but I don't want you to think of it as the end-all be-all. I get done with my pinch pot and it's done. There's more you can do with it. So back to the clay. Big piece of clay. I'm going to tear off a chunk that I think is going to fit in my hand, okay? So for each one of you, that's going to be a little different. So I'm not going to give you an exact size. For me, it's about the size of a baseball, maybe a little bit bigger. First thing we got to do is warm up the clay. This is what we always do when we start with the clay. Give it some kinetic energy, warm it up, get it ready to work with. We're going to make a ball. I've seen a lot of students try and make like a perfect sphere, and they spend all this time making this perfect sphere of clay. You don't need to do that. You just need a general ball of clay to work with, okay? So here's my ball of clay. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my thumb down into the clay. So I'm going to put the ball of clay in my palm so I can feel some pressure. So I'm going to try and press straight down. As I go down, right when I start feeling pressure on my palm, that's when I'm going to stop. That means I have a little bit of clay left before I go through the bottom. We don't want to do that, okay? The next thing I'm going to do, so here's what the inside looks like, is I'm going to pinch. Pinch pot, right? Use your dominant hand to pinch, use your other hand to turn. You're going to pinch like a puppet though, not like a crab, okay? This is just going to make marks in your clay, so you're going to be doing this. And it might get a little tiring at first. It takes a little bit of getting used to do this over and over again. So I'm going to start out, all I'm worrying about right now is the bottom inside edge, okay? I'm trying to see this area in my mind's eye, and I'm just going to try and make it even, okay? What we're going for is even walls. I'm going to grab my example. Hold on. Put it too far away. We're going for even walls, right? Nice and even. And then we can adjust later, but that's what we're trying to start with. So all I'm going to do is I'm barely kind of turning it with this hand, and I'm pinching a little bit at a time. So in my head, I'm looking, going, okay, that's a thick part, pinch that part more. That part's the thinner part, I don't need to pinch that. And just from doing the bottom inside edge, that's how much I've got done. It's bigger now. Now I'm going to work my way up. Same format, okay? So as I go up, all I'm trying to do is get the walls nice and even and pinch my way up. Now, if your arm starts to get tired, which it might, switch hands. Okay, that might be a little more difficult with your non-dominant. I know my left hand isn't as good at doing this, so I'm kind of rolling it while I'm pinching it. And then I can switch back. So it might take a little work. So I haven't even gotten to the top edge yet. I've got a nice hollow form. Now, you can alter the shape, the profile of your pinch pot based on what you're doing. If you're building some sort of bowl, you might want to angle your thumb a bit to have that pinch pot go out wider. If you're doing more of a cylinder, you want to keep that thumb straight up and down, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. So you can build straight up. And now I'm reaching the top edge. Now I don't want you to worry about this being perfectly even yet. We're trying to get the unevenness out of the bottom and into the top, and then we can adjust from there. So again, I'm just going to worry about the sides, trying to get them even. All right, now I'm going up around the lip. Okay, just pinching, pinching, pinching. And again, just like when we did slabs, I'm kind of going for somewhere between here and here. You don't want them much thicker than this, even though a lot of times it is the base for a project. You know, if it's going to be the part that it is sitting on, you don't need to go too thin. You want it to be strong structurally, but you can also get it a little bit thinner. This one I worked a little bit with a loop tool to get it a little thinner, you have to know what you're using it for and how thin you need it to be. Now here's a little pro tip. I'm going to move my camera down for a second. One thing I've figured out to do is I've got all these finger marks, right, in the clay. If I don't want those, I could spend a bunch of time kind of trying to smooth it out. But I found if I kind of just use the table, and I put my thumb down and roll it forward and guide it with my hand, I can kind of smooth out the surface a little bit. Okay? Makes it kind of nice and even. Now, one thing I've also seen a lot of is people spending too much time making the pinch pot. The more you handle the clay, the more it dries the clay out. So they start getting a lot of surface cracks because you're drying the surface out. So that's why it's also important not to have too much clay, because you're going to spend so much time trying to pinch it that you're actually going to dry the clay out and have to fix that later. So you want to have enough clay that you can get it done in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so here's what I have so far. Nice cup, right? And I can use this for all sorts of things. I'm going to angle my camera down so you can see some more of my tips here. So, my stool in. So here we go. We have, the bottom's not quite even. What you can do is I like to cup it and just turn it, get it nice and even, just a little bit. Doesn't need a lot of pressure, just so it has a nice place to sit. The next thing that you can do is if you look at the top, it's kind of wobbly, right? It's not quite even. It's not going to be great to drink out of this, for sure. It's going to be hard to build on top of this with coils or anything. So I'm going to trim it. And this is another skill that translates to wheel throwing. So I'm going to find the lowest point. I'm going to come in from the side so you can see me doing it. I'm going to find the lowest point of my uneven top. I'm going to put my fettling knife in. And I'm going to hold this hand really steady. You can lock your elbow into your body if you want. And I'm going to turn with my left hand. I've got a board on the canvas, so it's helping me spin it. You might have a sculpture wheel. I've also done it without anything, just spinning it on the table and it works. All right, there we go. Now I can see how actually how thick it is. It's on the thicker side, but it's pretty even, okay? Now here's another thing that is often a problem with pinch pots, is people don't do a great job of pinching this area out, and this area gets a little too thick. If this area is too thick, the moisture won't leave, you're going to have drying problems, and you possibly could have explosions later on in the kiln because the moisture can't get out. So what I like to do is I will take my loop tool and I will go just along the inside edge, right down in here, very inside edge. And again, I'm just going to kind of turn it, and I'll keep my loop tool in one spot on that inside edge. Not moving it, not applying too much pressure, just letting the loop tool do its job. I can take all this clay out that I didn't need on that inside edge. And then I have a little lip there. I can just take the other end of the loop tool and even that out. You can also go back in and smooth it with your fingers. But that gets rid of some of the clay that could have caused problems later on. So we have a decent pinch pot right now that I can use for doing all sorts of things. Now, one thing I would challenge you to do is on your first pinch pot, I know it's you don't necessarily want to, especially if you think you did a good job, is to cut it in half and see how even it is. Now I'm going to do that in just a second. Now when you go to put these away, especially if you made a wider pinch pot, I highly suggest turning this upside down before you put it in your bag, and then it won't roll around on you. If you're worried about it drying out, you can put a damp paper towel on it so that it stays moist. But this is a great way to put it away in your bag so that it won't roll around and get messed up. It also makes sure that the moisture is trapped on the inside so it doesn't dry out too quick. Now, let's test and see how well I made this pinch pot when I cut it in half. Okay, there we go. Now it's pretty good. It's a little thick there, but for the most part, it's pretty even. I could have made it thinner, but this is what you have to do when you're practicing, is figure out what's working, what's not, so you can make the next one better. That is how to do a pinch pot. Again, super useful. You definitely want to practice those. You definitely want to be able to use those. They're useful in lots of different ways for clay projects, and I hope that was helpful. See you next time.